Good afternoon. Welcome to Zambian Voices, an online conversation that highlights Zambian leaders who are working to improve the standard and well-being of their fellow citizens. This year takes on special importance in light of the COVID-19 pandemic, because as the world has retreated inside homes due to the lockdown measures all around the world, reports have shown an alarming increase in the already very high pandemic of violence against girls and women. Today, it's my pleasure to have on with us two champions here in Zambia, two very important traditional leaders who've made a tremendous difference in fighting against gender-based violence. So today it's my pleasure to welcome Your Royal Highness Chief Madzimawe from Chipata District and Your Royal Highness Chief Chikanta from Kalomo District. Chief, it's wonderful to welcome today Your Royal Highness.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be part of this panel to share a few ideas on how we can forge ahead in our quest to balance the way we live as both genders.
We appreciate the gesture that you are discussing with us to understand the local initiatives that as traditional leaders we are doing as we prepare to forge ahead with these interactions and interventions against GBV, child marriages, and HIV/AIDS.
Wonderful. Well, it's my pleasure to have you both here today to join in commemorating the 16 days of activism. And this year's theme is Orange the World: Fund, Respond, Prevent, and Collect. It's important to note that orange is the color of solidarity against gender-based violence. And each of you are champions in the work to the fight against gender-based violence. Could you talk a little bit, Your Royal Highness, about the work that you're doing in your community to prevent GBV?
Thank you, Your Excellency. I think in our chiefdom and also in the province, we have scaled up our efforts in trying to share the model since when I got trained. Of course, I was trained by ZCCP through the support from the American people. So we have done so much in terms of targeting the young people during this COVID period. We have even come up now in the chiefdom. There is what is called now MADZIMAWEI Youth Initiative, so that the young people themselves will be able to begin to think outside the box, to tailor programs that will help them to acquire skills, be it business skills, so that that dependence on government, on their parents, should be also be a thing of the past. But we didn't stop there. Under lockdown, we've managed to reach out and also to encourage those that are coming out of gender-based violence, survivors, so to say. And at the palace, we've actually opened up the palace to survivors. And right now, there is even a shelter which is under construction, but due to support, it has stored. This is a shelter that survivors, the young people have access to, so that even when somebody is going through counseling, they will have somewhere where they can find peace as they are being assisted to get back to their normal lives.
Well, thank you so very much, Your Royal Highness. We really appreciate all that you do in your chiefdom and working to change those attitudes, because like you say, fighting gender-based violence is essential to unlocking the potential of half our citizens and empowering women especially. Now, I wonder if Your Royal Highness Chief Chikanta, could you tell us a little bit about what you're doing to champion the fight against gender-based violence in your community as well?
In our community in Chikanta, we have been putting interventions on sensitizations, community sensitizations in the zones of the chiefdom, because at the chiefdom level, we have a chiefdom secretariat, GBV secretariat, which consists of about 20 members. And those members are coming from the zones, the 31 zones of the chiefdom. So we've been having sensitization meetings against GBV, child marriages, and HIV/AIDS, of course. So those committee, the local or zonal committees, they report to the chiefdom committee on quarterly basis. But the cases are being referred from zones to the chiefdom on daily basis as they occur. Those cases that need to be referred to Zambia police, it's done accordingly. But we have a very strong working committee on GBV and child marriages.
Now, this year, since the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, the world has seen a global increase of gender-based violence. And through our partners, the United States government is working to help found local efforts led by traditional leaders. And we're finding that this is important to help survivors. Now, Your Royal Highness, what changes have you made in your communities to support survivors, especially in the time of the COVID pandemic?
As a chiefdom, we are heavily affected by the COVID pandemic, save that we had higher instances of COVID cases in urban areas, and that we're a little bit saved because where we are in the rural areas, since then government had effected some restrictions in terms of movement by our people. So what we did was to begin, what I did myself was to make sure that we go across the chiefdom to sensitize everybody, to talk to the people, so that now we are going to have this life which they call the new normal. The usual normal has to be put on hold in the meantime, because if we are careless, we are not going to stand the effects of pandemic. Looking at our capacity, I don't think we have that capacity. So we put up, because we could not go in mass to go and do sensitization because of those restrictions. But what we did, we had to scale down on the number of people that were going to do sensitization. And also we, as I said earlier, that the palace has since when I got trained, we waived some of the traditions, because tradition is not cast in stone. It's something that can be changed based on the situation. And I'm a firm believer of cultural transformation. So what we did is to make sure that some of the restrictions in those older days, there were restrictions that sometimes could restrict women from accessing their chief, the palace. But right now, what we've done is to remove some of those traditions that have got no meaning to modern society. I don't think if I do that, I'll reduce my powers as a chief. No. So what we have done is to make sure that we make it more conducive, more especially to these survivors, victims, so that they can have access to the palace. We have more people now closer to the palace, psychosocial counselors, who would receive survivors even in the middle of the night. So this is one of the issues that programs that we've put up during this COVID period. And also we have not stopped. We have the system where data is also collected. So we haven't stopped, and we can measure our activities based on the data that we are collecting regarding the cases that are reported to our secretariat.
Thank you so very much. I very much like what you say about forming a new normal, because we need to make a new normal that is a world without gender-based violence too. So thank you for your efforts to fight against that. I wonder, Your Royal Highness, Chief Chikanta, could you give us some thoughts on this question as well?
Mainly, we have experienced a lot of child marriages during the COVID period from say January to about last month when the schools were closed, because most of our young school-going girls were at home. And most of them actually were thinking like due to COVID, the schools may not open. So a lot of them became pregnant, others got married. So we have an uphill battle sensitizing and dissolving those illegal underage marriages at local level.
Now, I know, Your Royal Highnesses, you're also partners with the US government through USAID's Stop GBV project. What services are you providing and how do you work with this project in your community?
There are quite a number of services that we are providing. When you access our secretariat, you'll be able to find people who would help with counseling survivors. And also we have people who are trained to encourage HIV testing. And they've also been trained with some kits that you are able to counsel and also test. So there are quite a number of programs that can be accessed at the palace, and also education support, because you bring this girl from this marriage. What next? She's supposed to go back to school. So we have that program that we do to push them back to school, and also we have this policy in Zambia where regardless of your age, you can still get back to school, which is called the re-entry policy. So when somebody visits the palace, there are quite a number of benefits that they will be able to access.
Well, thank you, Your Royal Highness. Appreciate all your leadership and working with us on this project. I wonder now, Your Royal Highness, Chief Chikanta, how do you and your community work with the USAID Stop GBV project?
We work very well because partners like ZCCP were working with us even before the current project. So we're just carrying on with what we started in the first phase of the project. So we are working very well. They provide us with logistical support. Like recently, we received 27 bicycles in Chikanta for the Chiefdom Secretariat to reach out to a lot of places, because transport sometimes is one of the issues now. Those 27 bicycles plus the secretariat, your logistical support that we have is making it a little bit easier for us to do the work now.
Well, again, I want to thank both of you, Your Royal Highnesses, and thank you so much for joining us today. I wonder if I could just offer briefly if you have any last words to share with us today.
Mine is just to say in our local language, Nyanja, we say Zikomo Kwambili, which simply say thank you so much. And also, I always use my language when I want to put up a point, like Tinari Kuwauza, meaning we are telling them that it is possible. So what we want is to escalate whatever is being done in Madzimawe Chiefdom, Chikanta Chiefdom, to all the chiefdoms in the country, so that Zambia can move forward. With just these few chiefdoms, I don't think we'll get there. But if we can co-opt every traditional leader, and also when you're a leader, the question is, why am I a leader? Once you find an answer to that question, then you'll begin to know that as a leader, it's all about service to our community.
Wonderful, so much. Really appreciate it, Zikomo Kwambiri. And I want to give a last word as well to Your Royal Highness Chief Chikanta, if you'd like to say a last word.
As traditional leaders, we are ready to work with all the stakeholders and partners in these GBV, child marriages, HIV/AIDS, and other issues. We are also trying to look at the aspect of trying to fight drivers, also the drivers of these pandemics. Poverty is one of the drivers. So we are trying to work with the private sector on how we can reduce poverty among these communities that we are talking about. So, because when we bring in the private sector, in particular in Chikanta, we are working with the companies like Seedico, a seed providing company for our farmers, so that if they provide a lot of seed to many of these people, production, agricultural production will go up, thereby reducing poverty. So we are bringing in other stakeholders other than the usual ZCCP, World Vision, and others, so that we fight, as we fight the pandemics, we also fight against poverty.
Well, thank you again. It's been a true pleasure to join with you, both of you as leaders in service, Your Royal Highnesses. And to our listening audience, I want to say thank you for joining us today. And before we end today's discussion, I would like to remind listeners that there is a lifeline and a child line that has a 24-hour call center. So this it provides free phone and text and web-based counseling to children and adults in need of support on a variety of issues, including gender-based violence, child marriage, mental health, substance abuse, and HIV/AIDS. Services are provided in English or in any of Zambia's 7 local languages, and they're available countrywide, even in hard-to-reach areas. So children can call 116 and adults call 933. So children, 116, and adults, 933. So thank you all for joining us today, and together we'll fight against gender-based violence to make sure that we